In my humble opinion, I thought Kevin Garnett was a better basketball player than Tim Duncan. For those who say Duncan, I do understand why many would say that, but one reason that I will not accept is that Duncan is better because of his 5 rings. The big fundamental was lucky to have the front office that was around in San Antonio, as the talent was greatly better assembled around Duncan than Garnett. Meanwhile, during the 90s and early 2000s, the Minnesota Timberwolves had an astonishing 7 consecutive first-round postseason exits. But then for the 2003-2004 NBA season, that would all change for the Minnesota Timberwolves. The Western Conference in the early to mid-2000s was a far better conference with more talent. As mentioned earlier, the Timberwolves could not get past the first round in the Western Conference playoffs, not because of Garnett, but because the talent was not as good as other Western Conference teams. Perhaps the biggest reason for this was that Minnesota was forced to forfeit first-round picks. This was due to an illegal contract with Wolves front-court player Joe Smith. Thus, Minnesota, they really had to search hard and be creative to try to acquire talent while not wasting Garnett's prime years. So here's the 02-03 Minnesota Timberwolves roster. But along with Garnett, the only other players who would remain to be on the 03-04 team were 2002 NBA All-Star Wally Szczerbiak, Gary Trent, and Troy Hudson. Hudson looked to be a really good find for Minnesota. The undrafted point guard could really shoot and was able to prove he could be a scoring spark from the perimeter. As for the 03-04 season, the Timberwolves, they signed some players like Mark Madsen, Michael Olowokandi, and Fred Hoiberg. But its best free agent signing was Trenton Hassell, who was released by the Bulls and then signed by Minnesota. Hassell is one of the better defensive guards in the NBA, and he could also shoot from the outside. But the 2 best acquisitions occurred in trades with Latrell Sprewell and Sam Cassell, a couple of players who were very good, but nearing their mid-30s, but were still going to play at a high level. Minnesota, they had the 6th best preseason odds, 5th in the West according to Basketball Reference, and Minnesota, they got off to a 9-8 start, but then for the final 65 games, the Timberwolves, they went 49-16 and never had a losing streak of more than 2 games. As a result, Minnesota, they earned the number 1 seed in the West, and Kevin Garnett, he became the NBA MVP. He received 120 out of 123 first-place votes, and then in addition, Sam Cassell, he became a first-time All-Star and was named to the All-NBA second team. So enter the playoffs. The top-seeded Timberwolves, they defeated the Nuggets 4-1. Next up, the still dangerous Sacramento Kings with Chris Webber, Mike Bibby, Doug Christie, Peja Stojakovic, and Vlade Divac. But in a thrilling 7-game series, Minnesota was able to advance. Next up in the Western Conference Finals, the Los Angeles Lakers, who had the 2nd best record in the West. Now the Lakers, they were still the favorites despite some numerous distractions and chemistry issues, but Minnesota, they had to deal with some major injury issues. First, Troy Hudson, he only played 29 games during the regular season and had to miss the playoffs. But what really hurt was starting point guard Sam Cassell, who played heavily during the first 2 rounds, but was not able to play a lot during the Lakers series. What happened in Game 7 against the Kings, Cassell, he hit a shot and celebrated. He celebrated by doing his big balls dance, which caused a hip injury, and thus Cassell, he wasn't the same against the Lakers. Cassell thought that if his health wasn't an issue, Minnesota would be champions. Instead, the Timberwolves, they lost to the Lakers in 6 games. After this season, there were contract disputes with Cassell and Sprewell. Head coach Flip Saunders, he was fired after 51 games, and strangely, even with Kevin Garnett, the Timberwolves, they were not able to make it back to the postseason, while KG was still playing in Minnesota. Kevin Garnett is one of the greatest basketball players ever, but it was just strange to see Garnett was only able to get past the first round once while he was in Minnesota, as that 2003-2004 NBA season was Garnett's best chance to win a title while with the Minnesota Timberwolves. Real quick, I just want to thank all those who have supported 90 Sports Nostalgia. Don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, share, and check out the links below for Patreon. Thank you so much. The 2003-2004 Minnesota Timberwolves. Kevin Garnett's best chance to win a ring in Minnesota.